5 signs a man has an unhealed father wound. If a man's father is absent, passive, inadequate, abusive, neglectful, or in general just doesn't meet the boy's needs in a very consistent and judicious manner, this leaves an emotional wound that can persist well into adulthood, mate. So I wanted to make this video to give you the 5 signs to see just how this shows up in your life, because it can be absolutely devastating to a man's psychological development. So you can look at all these signs and you can determine for yourself, how much is this wound playing itself out in my life. My name is Oliver, mate, and on this channel I help introverted men conquer nice guy syndrome and people pleasing to become confident, authentic and assertive, unapologetic in their relationships. In my coaching practice, the first sign I know that a man has an unhealed father wound is that he has few to no male friendships. Now, when I say this to you, mate, this might be a source of pain, but I promise you, as I say, with any of these points, I'm really not blaming you if you resonate with these. I'm just saying what I see, okay? A man who didn't have a healthy role model father figure growing up may have come to associate the traits that caused him pain, the traits about his father that caused him pain, he may have come to associate this as a boy with all men. And if this wound persists well into adulthood, then he may learn to never trust men. And because he doesn't trust men, he doesn't invite connection with men in his life. He doesn't invite male friends into his life. It's not as if he's broken. It's not as if there's something deeply wrong with him that causes men to not want to be around him or whatever. It's that he, psychologically, is repelling it. A lot of these men often have friendships with women in abundance. They often say that I just prefer the company of women. Women are much easier to get along with. I prefer sort of being around them. But the one thing that's really tricky about that is that a lot of these men also say to me when they're working with me is that they often don't get picked romantically by these women because he's not integrated his masculine energy, but I'll get to that in a moment. But on the topic of women, the second sign is that he craves validation from women excessively. Now here's a dynamic that can play itself out if you're a child. Is that if the father is not emotionally present, he's not fulfilling adequately the role of father in a boy's life, what can happen is a boy then may form an emotional attachment to the mother that goes way beyond just your normal emotional support. The mother and the child may come to, the mother and the boy may come to emotionally codepend on each other to deal in this kind of like unspoken alliance between the two of them to deal with the pain that's caused by the father's absence or abuse or neglect or whatever. It's like it serves the mother, she's getting her emotional needs met from the boy, and the boy is getting his emotional needs for safety met by clinging to the mother. Problem with that is, a boy can then, he never quite cuts the emotional umbilical cord, because a father is supposed to play that role. A father is supposed to help a boy cut the emotional umbilical cord and go into the world of men, the challenging world of risk-taking, challenge, overcoming things, pursuing goals, that kind of stuff. That's what masculine energy is all about. But in the absence of that, a boy then has this craving in adulthood for the safety and stability and comfort his mother gave him when he was younger. So in adulthood, he now people pleases. He can't handle rejection from women, is very rejection sensitive. He feels incomplete without this kind of female approval or validation. I myself, for the better part of my adult life, based my entire self-worth and my entire life around the validation of women for the most part. I didn't know it at the time, but pretty much every decision I made was formulated with this whole question of, will this make women like me? I didn't know this until it was pointed out to me by some very amazing men in my life, but that was my entire life script. And that came entirely from the father wound dynamic in my own life and my attachment to my mother. The third thing is that he has very little to no masculine energy integrated in his system. That sounds a little bit high concept, so let me explain what I mean by that. Your father is the first model of masculinity that you get. But if your father was not providing the blueprint of a healthy masculine man, of what healthy masculinity actually looks like, then you never got the blueprint. It's like all the other guys, all the other boys, they got their blueprint, they got their roadmap. If they had a healthy man in their life to show them what it means to be a healthy man, They all got the roadmap and they all got the instructions to something that you didn't get the instructions to. So the entire time throughout your life, you've basically been wandering around in the dark trying to make your mind up about what does a healthy man look like, what does it mean, etc. It's like you've been trying to build a house, but you don't even know what the blueprint is. It's like a muscle that never got developed. And without that muscle being developed, a man becomes passive. He becomes risk averse to such a degree where it rules his life, like fear rules his choices. He avoids conflict, he struggles with purpose, he becomes indecisive and floaty, and he doesn't really know what his purpose is. The fourth sign that a man has an unhealed father wound is that he chooses emotionally unavailable partners. Now, when it comes to our intimate relationships, we repeat the patterns that we've learned throughout our lives. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, which is essentially the unconscious mind's tendency to create or repeat certain patterns in our lives as a way of processing them and moving past them. So if your father was cold, distant, emotionally neglectful, abusive or whatever, then you can be sure that unless you've healed this wound as a man, you will repeat this pattern in some way in your adult relationships. It's not because you want to, it's not because it's your fault or you're consciously choosing it, it's just because to a deep part of your psyche, this feels familiar to you. So the fifth sign a man has an unhealed father wound is repressed rage. So how this can play itself out is, if a boy does not have healthy anger or healthy expressions of anger modeled for him, he simply just doesn't learn how to deal with his emotions or process his anger. He learns from his environment that anger is either completely not welcome at all, like some of you guys out there were raised in an environment where anger was literally never modeled, so you never actually learned how to channel it, okay? Or maybe some of you out there, your strong emotions or your anger was actively punished, right? You wanted to express it, but it was punished, so you learned to repress it. Problem with this is though, mate, this is how repressed rage can show up in your life, is when you push anger away, it doesn't actually go anywhere, it just pops up as something else, okay? So if you're pushing away rage or you're pushing away anger consistently, you're not setting boundaries with people, you're afraid of conflict, that kind of stuff, over a long enough time frame, that energy that would have gone out there has now become internalized in your system. So now that shows up as depression, that shows up as anxiety, that shows up as chronic procrastination, no self-confidence, that kind of stuff, low self-esteem. It's just energy that never actually learned. You never actually learn how to handle it or deal with it. When I'm working with a guy like this, he often says to himself, I don't get angry, I never get angry. For me, that is one of the biggest alarm bells that anger was not modeled in the house that this man grew up, and that he's got some repressed rage in his system somewhere. If all of these points resonated, mate, I promise you're not broken and it's not your fault. This channel is a source of support. I hope this channel is a source of support. Please pop a comment down below and let us know what your relationship with your dad was like, if that's not too personal for you to share on YouTube, obviously. But just share a little bit about how this video resonated, mate, because we're all friends here. I'm glad you found this channel, if you found it recently, because yeah, this is a place where we can talk about this stuff, a place where we can come together and we can heal, and we can really we can heal by getting real, I would say. So take care, mate, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay courageous.